The acrid smoke clawed at Alexander's throat as he burst through the back door, the scent of burning paper hitting him like a gut punch. There, in the garage under the harsh fluorescent light, his father, Chief Harlan Reed, the unyielding pillar of Willow Creek's law and order, tossed the last remnants of a photo into the fire, the edges curling black like dying whispers. "You're my son," Harlan growled, his voice cracking for the first time in years. "But this ends tonight." Alexander's heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces, each one slicing deeper as he lunged forward, too late to save the image of him and Matthew tangled in a stolen kiss under the summer stars. That photo, their only proof, snapped in secret on a disposable camera during a midnight hike in the Smoky Mountains, was gone, reduced to ash, just like the fragile life he'd been building in the shadows. In that frozen moment, with rain pattering on the tin roof like accusatory fingers, Alexander realized the war for his soul had just begun, and the battlefield was his own blood. Willow Creek, Ohio, wasn't the kind of place that made headlines unless someone robbed the feed store or a high school quarterback fumbled the homecoming game. It was the sort of Rust Belt town where front porches sagged under the weight of American flags and unspoken regrets, where the steel mill's closure 20 years back left ghosts in every diner booth. Alexander Reed had grown up here, kicking gravel on cracked sidewalks, dreaming of escape routes that led anywhere but the endless cornfields. At 24, he was back after 4 years at Ohio State, a poli-sci degree in hand that felt as useless as a screen door on a submarine. He'd taken a job at the local library, shelving books on civil rights he wished his father would read. Harlan Reed was a legend in Willow Creek, 6'4", with a mustache that could scare off jaywalkers and a badge that gleamed like a promise of justice. As police chief, he'd busted meth labs in trailer parks and mediated feuds at Friday night fish fries. To the town, he was the rock. To Alexander, he was the anchor dragging him under. Harlan had raised him alone after Alexander's mom skipped town when he was 8, chasing some salesman to Florida. "Men don't cry, Alex," Harlan would say, handing him a rag to wipe grease from his hands after fixing the old Ford in the driveway. "They fix what's broken." But Alexander had always known he was broken in ways no wrench could touch. The first time he felt it was at 15, watching Tommy Hargrove peel off his shirt after gym class, the curve of his spine like a secret Alexander ached to trace. He buried it deep, dating girls from church youth group, fumbling through proms with smiles that never reached his eyes. College was supposed to be freedom. Columbus buzzed with rainbow flags on High Street and guys who held hands without flinching. That's where he met Matthew Ellis. It was a rainy October afternoon in the student union. Alexander hunched over a lukewarm coffee, cramming for midterms. Matthew slid into the seat across from him, all golden retriever energy in a faded Buckeyes hoodie, his green eyes sparkling like he'd just won the lottery. "You look like you need a rescue," Matthew said, sliding a fresh muffin his way. "I'm Matt. Poli-sci 2, saw your notes, total Foucault fanboy." Alexander blinked, caught off guard by the easy grin, the way Matthew's knee brushed his under the table like it was the most natural thing. Yeah. "Alex. And thanks, but I can't." "Take the muffin," Matthew insisted, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's blueberry." Life-changing. They talked for hours that day about power structures in small towns, the hypocrisy of family values politicians, and how Foucault would lose his mind over Ohio's gerrymandering maps. By the time the rain stopped, Alexander had laughed more than he had in months, and Matthew had his number. Their first real date was a dive bar off campus, the kind with sticky floors and a jukebox stuck on Springsteen. Matthew showed up with wildflowers tucked into his backpack, sheepish as he handed them over. Not roses, too cliché. These are from the quad. Thought they'd suit you. Alexander's chest tightened. No one had ever seen him like that, fragile and worth the gesture. They split a pitcher of cheap beer, shoulders touching as they swayed to Thunder Road, Matthew's hand finding Alexander's in the dim light. When their lips met outside, under a street lamp buzzing like a faulty halo, it was electric, tentative at first, then hungry, like they'd both been starving. From there, it snowballed. Weekends blurred into stolen moments. Study sessions that devolved into make-out marathons on Matthew's futon. Road trips to Hocking Hills where they'd hike until exhausted and collapse into each other's arms by campfires. Matthew was a journalism major, all fire and ideals, interning at the campus paper where he wrote exposés on LGBTQ+ rights in the Midwest. "We're gonna change the world, Alex," he'd say, tracing lazy circles on Alexander's bare chest in the afterglow. "Starting with us." But Willow Creek loomed like a shadow. Alexander kept Matthew a secret. Phone calls hushed when Harlan was in earshot. Weekends visiting friends in Columbus. The photo, the one that would later fuel the flames, was taken on their 3rd anniversary hike. Matthew had insisted on the disposable camera, a relic from a thrift shop. "For memories," he'd said, snapping Alexander mid-laugh as they crested the ridge, the sunset painting the valley's gold. In the picture, their arms were linked, foreheads touching, pure unguarded joy. Alexander kept it hidden in his sock drawer, pulling it out on lonely nights like a talisman. Back in Willow Creek after graduation, the cracks started showing. Harlan had pulled strings for Alexander's library gig, expecting him to settle down with a nice girl from the old neighborhood. Dinners were interrogations. "Seen anyone special?" Harlan would prod over pot roast, his eyes sharp as handcuffs. Alexander deflected with jokes, but the weight pressed heavier. Matthew stayed in Columbus, chasing a job at the Dispatch, their love sustained by late-night drives and frantic reunions. "It's temporary," Matthew promised during one tearful goodbye, his fingers laced through Alexander's over the console. "I'll come for you. We build our own family." Then came the night of the fire. Alexander had slipped home early from his shift, eager to stash a care package from Matthew, a mixtape of queer anthems and a dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room, in his room. The garage light spilled yellow onto the driveway, and he heard the crackle before he saw it. Bursting in, the sight hit like a freight train. Harlan, face etched with fury and something deeper, fear, feeding the photo into the trash can blaze. The frame was already melting, their smiles warping in the heat. "Dad, what the hell?" Alexander's voice broke, raw and accusing. Harlan whirled, his uniform shirt untucked, sweat beading on his brow. "Found it in your laundry. You think I raised a pansy? In this town? Jesus. Alex, you're throwing away everything, your name, your future for that." The words landed like blows, each one echoing the sermons from Harlan's Baptist youth, the locker room taunts Alexander had endured. He grabbed for the tongs, desperate to salvage something, but Harlan shoved him back, the chief's strength unyielding. "It's sin, boy. Plain and simple. I won't have it in my house." Alexander staggered, the smoke stinging his eyes, mirroring the tears he fought back. "It's love, Dad. Real love." You can't just burn it away. Harlan's face crumpled then. Just for a second, a flicker of the man who'd bandaged his knees after bike wrecks. But it hardened fast. Love? That's weakness. And weakness gets you killed out there. He turned away, dousing the flames with a garden hose, the hiss mocking Alexander's sobs. That night, Alexander packed a duffel in the dark, sleeping on the living room couch, the house a tomb of silence. The next morning, Willow Creek woke to fog rolling off the Scioto River, but Alexander's world was ash-gray. He called Matthew from the library bathroom, voice muffled against the stall door. He knows. He burned it, the photo. Everything. Matthew's reply was a lifeline, fierce and steady. Pack your shit. I'm coming. We'll figure this out. Together. But as Alexander hung up, staring at his reflection in the cracked mirror, eyes red-rimmed, jaw set, he wondered if together was a luxury they could afford. Harlan's shadow stretched long in this town, and betrayal, he sensed, was just the spark. The drive to Columbus felt like fleeing a crime scene, Alexander's knuckles white on the wheel of his beat-up Civic. Harlan's parting shot, "Don't come back till you've fixed yourself," ringing in his ears like a siren. He blasted the mixtape Matthew had sent, Frank Ocean's falsetto weaving through the dashboard speakers. "Thinkin' 'bout forever, babe." It was a balm and a blade, reminding him of tangled sheets and whispered promises, but also the chasm widening between his past and this fragile now. Matthew met him at a Waffle House off I-71, the kind with fluorescent buzz and waitresses who called you Han. He was waiting in a booth, nursing black coffee, his face lighting up like sunrise when Alexander walked in. "Hey, stranger." No questions, no pity, just open arms as Alexander slid in, burying his face in Matthew's neck, inhaling the familiar scent of cedar cologne and newsprint. They didn't talk about the fire over greasy hash browns. Instead, Matthew spun tales of his latest scoop, a corruption probe at City Hall that had the editor salivating. "You're crashing with me," he declared, stealing a bite of Alexander's waffle. "My roommate's subletting to LA anyway. We'll make it ours." The apartment was a third-floor walk-up in the short north, walls papered with Matthew's clippings and protest posters. "Love is love" in bold block letters. That first night, they made love slow and deliberate, as if mapping each other's scars. Matthew's hands were gentle on Alexander's ribs, tracing the tension knotted there. "You're safe," he murmured against Alexander's collarbone. "This is home." For a few weeks, it was. Alexander commuted back to Willow Creek for shifts, lying to Harlan about staying with buddies, while nights dissolved into domestic bliss, cooking pasta in the tiny kitchen, binging Queer as Folk reruns until dawn. Matthew's head in his lap as Alexander read aloud from library halls. They dreamed big, Matthew pitching a podcast on queer history, Alexander applying to grad school for social work. "We'll get a place with a yard someday," Matthew said one evening, sprawled on the fire escape, passing a joint under the city lights. "Adopt a mutt." The whole picket fence dream, but with more rainbows. But secrets have a way of festering, like untreated wounds. Harlan's silence was a storm cloud, broken only by curt texts. "Rent's due. Don't embarrass me." Alexander ached to confront him, to drag the truth into the light, but fear glued his tongue. What if the chief's influence blackballed him from every job in the county? What if Willow Creek's whispers turned to shouts? The betrayal came from an unlikely quarter. Cousin Eddie, Harlan's nephew and Alexander's reluctant drinking buddy since childhood. Eddie worked dispatch at the station, a beer gut and a Bible verse tattoo straining against his uniform. They'd met for wings at the VFW one Friday. Alexander buzzed on IPAs, letting slip a vague seeing someone special over the din of golden tea machines. Eddie leaned in, eyes narrowing. Special? Huh? Like a chick? Or? You know, the word hung unspoken, but Alexander felt it slither. He shrugged it off, changing the subject to the Browns' latest choke. But Eddie's grin was oily, promising trouble. 2 days later, Matthew's phone lit up with a forwarded email from an anonymous tip line, but Alexander knew. Attached was a blurry screenshot. Him and Matthew at a campus pride rally last year, arms around each other, rainbow face paint smudged. The message read, "Faggots ruining the heartland." Chief Reed's boy? Pathetic. Matthew's face drained of color as he showed it to Alexander over takeout lo mein. "This is from your town." Eddie? Alexander's stomach twisted. He must have dug it up. God. Matt. I'm sorry. The apology tasted like failure, but Matthew waved it off, pulling him close. Hey, we're tougher than this. Block the creep. But maybe we go public? With your dad? I mean, rip the Band-Aid. The idea terrified Alexander. Harlan wasn't just homophobic. He was the town's moral compass, quoting Leviticus at barbecues while ignoring the hypocrisy of his own divorce. But Matthew's eyes, earnest and unblinking, chipped at his resolve. Okay, Alexander whispered finally. For us. They drove back to Willow Creek the next weekend, Matthew's hand steady on Alexander's thigh as they crossed the county line. The air thickened with memory, pastures dotted with silos, the river glinting like fool's gold. Harlan was hosting a precinct cookout, the backyard thick with smoke from the grill, laughter mingling with the sizzle of brats. Alexander spotted him first, apron tied over his khakis, flipping burgers with the precision of a man who'd cuffed hundreds. Dad, Alexander called, voice steadier than he felt, Matthew a solid presence at his side. Heads turned, deputies, wives, Eddie smirking from the cooler. Harlan's spatula froze mid-air. His gaze flicked to Matthew, then back, jaw clenching like a trap. Alex. Didn't know you were bringing company. This is Matthew, Alexander said, the words a cliff dive. My boyfriend. The backyard fell into a hush, broken only by the pop of a beer can. Harlan's face mottled red, veins bulging at his temples. Boyfriend, he spat the word like venom, tossing the spatula onto the picnic table. In my yard? With my men watching, Matthew stepped forward, hand extended. Chief Reed. Sir. Pleasure. Alex speaks highly of you. Harlan ignored it, eyes locked on Alexander. We talked about this. Inside. Now, the kitchen was a battlefield, linoleum scuffed from years of Harlan's pacing. You bring that fairy here? To parade like some damn float? Spittle flecked his lips, his fists balled. It's not a parade, Dad. It's my life. Alexander's voice rose, cracking the dam. I love him. And you burning that photo? It didn't erase us. It just made me hate the silence more. Harlan recoiled as if slapped, but rage surged back. Love? That's your excuse? I've protected this town from degenerates, drunks, dealers, perverts, and now my own son's one of them. He slammed a fist on the counter, rattling the salt shaker. Eddie warned me. Said you were slipping. I thought it was a phase. The name ignited Alexander. Eddie? That snake forwarded hate mail about us. And you listened. Harlan's eyes darted. Guilt flashing before denial armored him. He cares. Like family should. You're blind. Boy blinded by lust. This'll ruin you. The job, the respect gone. Matthew appeared in the doorway then, face pale but resolute. With respect, sir. That's bullshit. Alex is the best man I know. Kind, smart, braver than most. If you can't see that, you're the one who's blind. Harlan's laugh was bitter, hollow. Out. Both of you. Don't set foot here again till you come to your senses. Alex. They left under a sky bruising purple. The cookout's chatter resuming like white noise. In the car, tears came hot and unbidden for Alexander. Matthew's arm around him as they peeled out. He'll come around, Matthew lied softly, but Alexander knew better. The betrayal stung deeper than the fire. Eddie, bloodkin, weaponizing whispers, Harlan, choosing legacy over love. Back in Columbus, they threw themselves into routine, but the fracture lingered. Alexander's calls to Harlan went unanswered, voicemails piling like unanswered prayers. Matthew's podcast gained traction, interviews with queer activists fueling his fire, but Alexander withdrew, shifts at a temp agency blurring into numbness. One night, scrolling X on his phone, he stumbled on a Willow Creek thread. Chief son shacking up with some city queer. Sad day for the Reeds. Eddie's handle was all over it. Anonymous outs piling on. Rage boiled over. Alexander drove to the station at midnight, pounding the glass doors until Eddie emerged, bleary-eyed in sweats. You son of a bitch, Alexander snarled, shoving the printouts at him. This your idea of family? Eddie's smirk faltered. Come on. 'Cause. Just looking out. Uncle Harlan stressed, budget cuts. That new DA breathing down his neck. Thought a wake-up call. Wake up! Alexander's laugh was sharp. You outed me for politics? You're no better than the trolls. Eddie shrugged. Defensive. Town talks anyway. Better from kin than strangers. But his eyes shifted, shame flickering. Sorry, man. Didn't think it'd blow up. Alexander walked away, the Ohio chill seeping into his bones. Betrayal wasn't just Harlan's torch. It was the web of complicity, threads spun from fear. As he merged onto the highway, phone buzzing with Matthews, where are you? He vowed to cut them all loose. But vows, like photos, burn easy. Autumn deepened in Columbus, leaves carpeting the Scioto in crimson and gold, but Alexander's world tilted toward winter's gray. The temp gig folded after a payroll glitch, leaving him pounding pavement for anything, barista, clerk, anything to keep the lights on. Matthew's star rose, though. The podcast hit 1,000 downloads, sponsors sniffing around with offers of studio time. We're making it, he'd say, kissing Alexander's temple over morning coffee. But the we felt lopsided, Alexander's insecurities gnawing like termites. Harlan's radio silence stretched into months, broken only once. A certified letter arrived at the apartment, cold legalese evicting Alexander from the family home, citing irreconcilable differences. Enclosed was a check, $5,000, Harlan's idea of severance. Fix yourself, the note read, in his blocky scrawl. Alexander tore it up, shards scattering like confetti at a funeral. The real gut punch came mid-November, when Eddie called drunk, slurring apologies into the voicemail. "Uncle's bad. Alex. Real bad. Heart stuff. Doc say stress. You gotta come." Guilt twisted like a knife. Despite everything, Harlan was flesh and blood. The man who'd taught him to throw a curveball, to stand tall against bullies. Matthew urged caution. Don't let him reel you in. But Alexander couldn't shake the pull. He drove alone, the highway a ribbon of regret, arriving at the hospital in Marion as snow flurried like static. Harlan lay in a sterile room, tubes snaking from his arm, monitors beeping a metronome of mortality. He looked smaller, the mustache unkempt, eyes sunken. "Alex," he rasped when Alexander entered, voice a gravel whisper. "Dad." Alexander hovered by the bed, arms crossed like armor. Harlan's hand twitched toward him, then fell. "Didn't think you'd come. Family, right?" The words dripped sarcasm, but pain undercut them. The chief's gaze dropped. "Eddie told me about the posts. Said he messed up. Fired him this morning." A cough rattled his chest. "Should have done it sooner." Alexander sank into the vinyl chair, the air thick with antiseptic and unspoken sins. "Why, Dad? The photo, the eviction. Why push so hard?" Harlan's eyes glistened, a tear escaping. "Your mom. She left, 'cause I couldn't give her what she needed. Soft. She called me. After she gone, I swore I'd be iron for you. Protect you from weakness." He paused, breath labored. "Saw myself in you hiding. Afraid." The confession hung, fragile as frost. Alexander leaned forward. "Hiding what? A beat? Then, loved a boy once. Summer camp, 78. Kissed him by the lake. He wrote letters. I burned them. Joined the force to prove I was man enough." Harlan's voice cracked. "Thought it'd make me straight. Made me mean instead." Alexander's world tilted. "The Iron Chief. Queer? Buried under badges and bravado? You could have told me." "We could have." "No." Harlan shook his head. "Town'd eat us alive. Still might. But seeing you fight made me remember the burn." They sat in silence, the snow thickening outside, blanketing the parking lot. For the first time, Alexander saw his father not as monolith, but mosaic cracked by secrets. "Matthew, he's good. That. Real good." Harlan nodded faintly. "Bring him next time. If there's a next." There was. Over the holidays, Alexander shuttled between worlds, Matthew's wary optimism thawing the ice. Christmas at the hospital was awkward. Matthew gifting Harlan a crime novel, the chief managing a gruff thanks. But it was a start. Discharged in January, Harlan convalesced at home, Alexander overseeing meds and meals, their talks tentative bridges over the chasm. Matthew, ever the journalist, dug deeper. "Your dad's story, it's huge. Generations of repression. We could anonymize it for the pod." Alexander hesitated. "He's not ready," but the seed took root, a way to humanize the pain. Spring brought green shoots, Harlan attending a PFLAG meeting in Marion, incognito in a ball cap, Alexander landing a counseling internship at a Columbus LGBTQ+ center. Romance reignited too. Matthew surprised him with a weekend at Hocking Hills, recreating their hike. under the same ridge. They kissed as the sun dipped, Matthew pulling a new photo from his pocket, them captured by a passerby on a reel camera. No more disposables, he grinned. This one's fireproof. Laughter bubbled up, healing something raw. They made love in the tent that night, urgent and affirming, bodies a testament to survival. But Willow Creek's undercurrents stirred. Eddie, jobless and bitter, fueled a whisper campaign. Chiefs gone soft, letting the queer kid run the show. It peaked at the town hall meeting in May, budget vote looming. Harlan, back at the podium, faced a packed room, faces he'd trusted turned accusatory. Chief Reed, a farmer, bellowed, "Heard your boys. Lifestyles influencing department policy." "That true?" Murmurs rippled. Harlan gripped the lectern, knuckles white. Alexander watched from the back, Matthew's hand in his, heart pounding. "Lifestyle," Harlan echoed, voice booming. "My son's a citizen, same as you. Loves who he loves, works hard, pays taxes. If that's a crime, lock me up too," gasps echoed. "I've served this town 30 years, busted your dealers, pulled your kids from wrecks. Won't apologize for family now." The room erupted, claps from allies, jeers from holdouts. Eddie stormed out, face thunderous. Later, in the parking lot, Harlan found Alexander, clapping his shoulder. "Proud of you, son. For standing." Tears pricked. "You too, Dad." Betrayals echo faded, replaced by fragile alliance. But conflict brewed elsewhere. Matthew's podcast deal came with strings, a network exec pushing for edgier content, suggesting they out Harlan for ratings. "Anonymized's boring," the suit said over Zoom. "Real names sell." Matthew resisted, but temptation gnawed. Exposure could launch his career, validate their fight. Alexander sensed the shift. Late nights at the laptop, Matthew's evasions. "Just edits," he'd say, but guilt shadowed his eyes. The climax shattered on a humid June evening. Alexander came home early, finding Matthew on the fire escape, script in hand, exclusive, inside the closet of a Midwest police chief. Harlan's story, raw and named. "You weren't gonna tell me?" Alexander's voice trembled, betrayal fresh as the fire's smoke. Matthew jumped, face ashen. "Alex, wait, it's leverage. To force change." He could be a hero, or a target. Alexander snatched the pages, ripping them. "You think outing him fixes us? This control, Matt. Like Dad's burning, erasing what doesn't fit your narrative." Hurt flared in Matthew's eyes. "My narrative? This is our story. I've bled for it. Lost friends, family back home in Akron who disowned me. You think I don't get betrayal? You get ambition." The words cut deep, Alexander's chest heaving. "I thought we were partners, not your plot twist." Matthew reached for him, but Alexander recoiled. "I love you." "This could." "Love doesn't burn secrets." Alexander grabbed his keys, storming out into the dusk, the door slamming like a guillotine. He drove aimlessly, ending at the Scioto, stones skipping across the water under streetlights. Hours passed, phone silent. Dawn crept in, pink and unforgiving. When Matthew's text came, "I'm sorry. Scripts trashed. Come home." But home felt fractured. Alexander crashed at a motel, Wrestling demons, Harlan's confession, Eddie's spite, now Matthew's hubris. Was love just a series of betrayals, each one a spark to the next blaze? The motel room smelled of stale smoke and regret, the kind of place where truckers nursed divorces over vending machine coffee. Alexander lay on the sagging bed, staring at water stains on the ceiling that mapped like fractured hearts. Matthew's texts piled up. Please talk. I fucked up. I need you, each one a hook in his gut. By noon, Harlan called, voice gruff over the hum of AC. Heard from Eddie, you two hit a snag. Boy's stubborn, like his old man. But don't let pride torch it. Advice from the arsonist. Yet it nudged Alexander toward the door. He met Matthew at their spot, a bench by the Olentangy River, willows draping like veils. Matthew looked wrecked, ice puffy, a six-pack sweating on the grass. I deleted the file, he said, voice raw. Permanently. The exec can shove it. Alexander sat, space between them a chasm. Why'd you write it? Matthew cracked a beer, handing it over. Fear. Podcast's hot, but what if it fizzles? Your steady internship, dad thawing. Panicked, thought exposured cement us. Stupid. The honesty cracked Alexander's armor. It felt like Eddie. Like using pain for gain. Matthew winced. I'm not Eddie. I'm the guy who drove through blizzards for you, who dreams of rings, not ratings. He pulled a small box from his pocket, velvet and trembling hands. Inside, 2 silver bands, simple, etched with forever in script. Not proposing yet. Just promise. No more secrets. Tears blurred the river. Alexander slipped his on, the weight grounding. Promise me we fight fair. They did, for a while. Summer wove gold through their days. Picnics in Goodale Park. Harlan barbecuing with tentative invites. Even Eddie slinking back with a mumbled sorry over beers at the VFW. The podcast pivoted to listener stories, anonymous voices of queer Midwesterners, weaving a tapestry of resilience. Alexander contributed too, facilitating group sessions at the center, his own scars forging empathy. But conflict simmered beneath. Harlan's recovery masked deeper rot. At a department picnic, whispers of an internal probe surfaced, mishandled evidence in a drug bust. Eddie's old cronies pointing fingers. Stress again, Harlan brushed off. But Alexander saw the toll, the way his hands shook pouring coffee. Matthew, meanwhile, chafed at the network's leash, their sensitivity notes diluting episodes on trans rights. Censorship, he fumed one night, pacing the apartment. They want palatable gay, not real. Alexander pulled him down, legs entwined on the couch. Then go indie. We bootstrap it, you, me. Dad's garage for recording. The idea sparked, Matthew's grin returning like sunbreak. They launched Heartland Echoes in August, raw and unfiltered, Harlan guesting as Midwest Dad, voice modulated but truth unvarnished. Downloads surged, not from polish, but pulse, the human ache of coming out in corn country. Fall brought harvest festivals and fragile peace, but betrayal's ghost lingered. One crisp October night, Alexander's phone buzzed with a tip from an old library patron. Check the station logs. Your dad's in deep. Heart sinking, he drove to Willow Creek alone, Matthew buried in edits. The station was quiet, night shift skeleton crew. Alexander sweet-talked the desk sergeant, family business, and slipped into records, microfiche flickering like fireflies. There it was, a 2023 bust. Harlan signing off on planted coke in a dealer's car. Eddie as witness. Cover for budget shortfalls? Or worse, nausea rose. His father, The Rock, corrupt, Alexander pocketed copies, fleeing to the riverbank, where he and Harlan used to fish. Dawn broke as he called Matthew, voice hollow. Dad's dirty. Evidence tampering. Eddie's involved. Matthew's reply was steel. We expose it. Anonymously, protect him. But Harlan confessed first. Waiting on the porch when Alexander arrived. Face haggard. Knew you'd find out. Eddie pushed it. Said it'd fund his kids' braces. I signed. Stupid. Why? Alexander demanded, papers crumpling in his fist. After everything, the health scare, the meeting. You were changing. Harlan's eyes met his. Weary. Old habits. Thought I could fix it quiet. Like burning photos. He stood, offering wrists. Call it in, son. Do right. The arrest was a media circus. Willow Creek chief busted in scandal. Harlan cuffed in his own driveway. Flashes popping like gunfire. Alexander stood by. Matthew's arm anchor. As deputies led him away. Proud, Harlan mouthed. Before the car door shut. Eddie vanished. Rumors of fleeing to Toledo. But the betrayal layered. Not just the crime, but Harlan's choice to shield it. Dragging Alexander's hard-won trust into the mud. The town turned feral. Protests at City Hall. Queer kids fault graffiti on the library. Hate mail flooded the podcast, forcing a hiatus. In the fallout, Alexander and Matthew's bond strained. Sleepless nights bled into arguments. Matthew pushing to cover the story, Alexander begging off. It's family, he'd snap. It's justice, Matthew countered. Hiding enables. The chasm widened. Love fraying at edges. One blizzard night in December, it snapped. Matthew, fresh from a tense call with backers pulling out, lashed. You're like him, protecting rot 'cause it's blood. Alexander recoiled. And you're the crusader, burning bridges for clicks. Words escalated. Doors slammed. Matthew stormed to the couch. Alexander to bed alone. Morning brought regret, but pride walled them. Days blurred into ice. Small gestures, coffee left steaming. Socks folded, thawing nothing. Climax crested on New Year's Eve. Harlan's trial looming. A vigil for queer rights in Columbus drew crowds. Matthew emceeing. Alexander in the throng. As confetti rained, Matthew took the mic. Tonight, we honor hidden loves. Like a chief who burned photos but learned to rebuild. The crowd cheered, but Alexander froze. Public nod to Harlan? Without asking. Betrayal's echo. Amplified. He pushed through bodies, finding Matthew backstage. You outed his regret. For applause, Matthew's face fell. It was tribute. Humanizing. Without me, Alexander's voice broke. I can't, Matt. Not like this. He walked into the night, fireworks bursting overhead like false stars. Love, seemed, was a flame warm till it consumed. January's chill mirrored Alexander's marrow. The apartment a mausoleum of half-packed boxes. Matthew tried notes in lunch bags. I love you scrawled on mirrors, but the rift gaped. Harlan's trial dominated headlines. The chief pleading guilty to reduced charges. Sentenced to probation and community service. Light, The judge called it, citing his record. Alexander visited weekly at the county facility. Their talks a ritual of amends. "You were right," Harlan said one gray afternoon, shuffling cards for gin rummy. "About burning. Can't erase love or mistakes." His hands, once steady on the wheel, trembled now. "Miss your mom sometimes. Wonder if she'd be proud." Alexander dealt, throat tight. "She would have loved Matthew. Fierce, like her." Harlan nodded, eyes distant. "Tell him. Sorry. For the fire." The olive branch weighed heavy. Alexander carried it home, but the apartment echoed empty. Matthew's shifts at a new gig, freelance for NPR, pulling him late. They coexisted like ghosts, intimacy reduced to brushes in the hall. The turning point came unbidden. A letter from Eddie, forwarded from a Toledo P.O. box. "'Cause I'm sober now. AA in the Rust Belt sucks. But it's honest. Uncle's fall? My doing. Owed you that photo back, snuck a copy before the blaze. Enclosed. Forgive? Nah. But understand, we all burn shit we fear." Inside, the duplicate photo, singed edges, but intact. Their smiles, eternal. Alexander wept. First time since the fire. The release cathartic. He found Matthew at the river that evening, skipping stones, face etched with exhaustion. "Eddie sent this." Alexander held out the print. "A copy." Said he's sorry. Matthew took it, fingers tracing the frame. "God, we look happy." His voice cracked. "Alex, wait." Alexander stepped closer, snowflakes melting on his lashes. "You were right too. About justice. Hiding Harlan hurt us all. But love is not exposure. It's holding through the burn." Matthew's eyes searched his. "I pushed 'cause I was scared of losing you to Willow Creek's pull. But I get it now, your world's not mine to rewrite." They embraced then, tentative, then fierce, the photo crinkling between them. "Marry me," Matthew whispered, the ring box from months back resurfacing. "For real this time," Alexander laughed through tears. "Yes. But no podcasts at the wedding." Spring unfurled like forgiveness. Harlan, paroled early for good behavior, attended the courthouse ceremony in June, khakis and a tie, eyes misty as he walked Alexander down the aisle of folding chairs in the short North Arts District. "You look sharp, son," he rumbled, clapping Matthew's shoulder. "Take care of him. Always, Chief." Matthew grinned, and for a moment, the three stood woven, father, son, love. Eddie showed too, gaunt but clean-shaven, slipping Alexander a six-pack post-vows. "Water under the bridge? No, but close enough for a nod." The podcast reborn as Rebuilt Fires, co-hosted by all, Harlan's gravel tales of repression, Matthew's firebrand questions, Alexander mediating with quiet wisdom. Episodes delved human betrayals as teachers, love as ash-fertile soil. Listeners wrote, "Your dad's voice saved me coming out at 50. Willow Creek softened slow. Harlan volunteered at the library, shelving Stonewall beside Patriarchy Blues. The town, grudging, absorbed it, rainbow stickers on truck bumpers, a pride float at the fair. Years layered like sediment. Alexander and Matthew adopted Luca, a scrappy terrier mix, then fostered teens from the center. Harlan retired, puttering in the garage, framing that salvaged photo on the mantel. Proof, he'd say, toasting with root beer. We rise from it, one autumn eve, as leaves danced. Alexander and Matthew hiked the Smokies again, Luca bounding ahead. At the ridge, sunset gilding the valleys, they snapped a new photo, 3 generations now, Harlan's silver hair catching light. No disposables. Digital, backed up eternal. Think Dad ever regrets the burn? Matthew asked, arm around Alexander. He regrets the silence more. Alexander leaned in, lips brushing. Like we won't, in the quiet, with winds whispering secrets. They knew. Love wasn't unscarred perfection, but the humanistic forge, dramatic in its falls, emotional in its climbs, romantic in its returns. Betrayals forged stronger bonds. Conflicts birthed clarity. And in America's heartland, where flames once threatened, embers now warmed a legacy rebuilt. As stars pricked the sky, Alexander whispered, "Forever, babe," and Matthew's kiss sealed it, tender, enduring, a story without end.